Hello, welcome back. So, today I'm going to do a video all about the Yellow Box RWS, the US Games Rider Waite Smith deck. So, just a little background on, in general, why I have so many, because I have lots of these. I collect the Yellow Box specifically. And it really all started with searching for the Blushing Fool and researching exactly which edition I needed to get in order to find it. And then I just kind of fell into a little rabbit hole of comparing the different card stocks and which images are better and why the current edition that's available if you order it today is just kind of shitty in comparison. And yeah, so it's very interesting. I've broken the decks down based off of the address essentially for US games, because the address tells you a lot about what the card stock will be like and which edition you have and which edition you're looking for. And so I'm breaking it down like that, and what I'll do is I'll just I'm gonna walk you through each of the different editions, or when the editions changed enough to matter, and hopefully give you all of the information that you need to find a really great Yellow Box deck that you can love and enjoy and use, because I think it's a real shame that it has such a negative, not negative, but you hear lots of people say, oh, I like the RWS system, but I don't really like the Yellow Box. The colors are really garish, they're ugly, it's not, there are prettier versions of it out and about. So hopefully I'll be able to show you that you can find a Yellow Box deck that is reasonably priced, that is really pretty, and has really nice lines, nice clean lines, clear, legible, detailed, very nice cards. So I'm going to start with the first three decks that I'm going to show you are what I believe are the very first edition of the Yellow Box deck. The address for US Games at this point in time is 734 Broadway, New York, New York. And you can see right here, the little white book also says Samuel Weiser. So the box, right off the bat, things to note about this edition if you're looking and you can only see the box. The bottom where it says the Magician is going to be white or very light gray. There's no copyright symbol at the top or trademark. The top of the box says made in Switzerland expressly for Samuel Weiser Inc. So that's the side. The other side, there's the bottom, and then here's the back. You'll see on later editions there's other things about it, but basically this is what you're looking for if you want a deck that doesn't have a copyright. The Samuel Weiser decks are the decks that predominantly have the Blushing Fool. So basically, Samuel Weiser is, I believe, British, or he may be from here. Anyway, this edition, the Samuel Weiser deck, are printed by the same people, the same printing company that printed the blue box edition that you see lots of people trying to find. It goes for pretty decent amount of money, and it is the British version of this. But the cardstock, I don't have a blue box, but from what I can tell, the cardstock is comparable. The images are comparable. So, yeah. The reason that I say it's the first edition is it doesn't have a number line of any kind. And I know, based on the address, that it probably came out in like 1971-ish, which is about the same time that the blue box came out. So, I have 2 editions that are Blushing Fools, and then I have 1 that are not. So, it's so hard to show on camera, but you can kind of see it's like red and splotchy. Here is the one that is not. It's just like creamy, kind of alabaster-y, not, it doesn't, there's no like discoloration at all. And oddly enough, there are, of the 2 Blushing Fools, one definitely is more red than the other. So the Blushing Fool thing actually was a mistake. It was a printing error. And if you're looking for it in the blue box, the British edition of this deck, you'll want to look for the second printing, not the first printing. The first printing, the skin is all smooth and good. Yeah, so those are the Samuel Weiser decks that I have. And like I said, you can get them, you can find them on eBay. I only ordered 1 knowing that it was a Samuel Weiser deck, because the other 2 that I ordered, I could see that they obviously were going to be no copyright on the card. That's the other amazing thing about it, is there is no US Games copyright at all anywhere on it. It's just a nice, clean, good representation of the card. And it still has Pixie's font at the bottom, I believe. Yeah. Okay, so then the next deck that we're going to look at looks almost exactly the same. The only difference is at the top, instead of saying made in Switzerland expressly for Samuel Weiser, it says US Game Systems Inc. Other than that, everything is exactly the same, still printed in Switzerland, still, and Mueller and C, I believe, becomes AGM. This is the 6th printing of the deck, and it's often called the Sunburnt Magician because, as you can see, the magician's face is almost as red as the robe that he's wearing. And at this point, US Games is at 468 Park Avenue South in New York, New York. And this is how I know it's the 6th edition, is because of this line of numbers. You always go with the smallest number. So in this case, it's the 6th edition. It's a different little white book to the one that Samuel Weiser put out. It doesn't have that anymore. Now it says US Game Systems Inc. The 6th edition of the deck, I don't know. I'm not going to say that it's a Blushing Fool, but it's very, very similar. It has a very similar sort of coloration to the skin. It's still kind of lighter, but, it is what it is. At this point, the cardstock is very, very nice. It's it's papery, but like there's like a very light kind of lamination. It almost looks like if you press with a, like when you're coloring with a crayon and you press really hard, it gets like waxy. It's kind of like that. It's not sticky like wax is, but it's like that's the look of it. Like that's the level of shine. There's not really much. I mean, you can see it doesn't catch the light at all. And the line work on these are just like, it's just so much better. Like, it's not all blurred out and all like, I don't know, it's just beautiful. At the end of the video, I'll do a little comparison of like the Hermit card. You can see really well the difference in the color and stuff. And then I have the 9th edition that still looks a little sunburnt. And then it's still at the same address. Everything is the same. Except, obviously, it says 9 and 10, so it's the 9th edition. This one, however, the skin is like, again, very, very smooth, very nice. And the cardstock is still really nice. It's, you know, it's bendy, but it's like sturdy, and it's got the same finish. So if you're looking for a yellow box that has no copyright at all, this one still has no copyright at all. As far as I can tell, at least up until the 9th printing, that's the decks that you'll want to be looking for, and you'll want to look for an address that's either 468 Park Avenue South in New York or 734 Broadway, also in New York. So those are the two addresses that will give you a deck with no copyright at all. So in 1975, US Games starts really cracking down on the copyright and making sure that they're getting credit for it, and they also move to 38 East 32nd Street in New York. This is the 16th printing. Other than that, it literally looks exactly the same. And then I forgot to mention the two varieties that have no copyright at all both have just 2 blank extra cards. When they move to 38 East 32nd, the early editions, like this one, still don't have any, there's no copyright, there's no ISBN number, there's no barcode, there's nothing. It's still, if you just looked at this box next to one of the boxes that was no copyright, it looks exactly the same. So in this case, you really want to make sure that you can see the little white book or the extra cards, because that's the only way that you're going to know if it has a copyright on the card or not. So this edition will have an extra card and then a card that just has like popular tarot decks at the time, tarot sets, and books specifically. The Encyclopedia of the Tarot, it doesn't list volume 2, so this had to have come out before volume 2 of the Encyclopedia of Tarot came out, so it was definitely before 1986, because that's when volume 2 came out. So then the next edition that I have is the 18th, and at this point the box still looks the same. The title, The Magician, is gray. It still says made in Switzerland expressly for US games. There's the side, the bottom, the back. And at this point, you can see they've added the ISBN. So like they're about to start cracking down on copyright infringement and all that kind of stuff. So at that point, they add the ISBN to it. The cardstock's still very nice. It's a little thinner than the ones that don't have a copyright, and now they have added the copyright to the bottom. But it's still a lot less obtrusive than the current one, because the current one is something like copyright US Game Systems Inc. with like 1971 or 19, depends on when you get the deck, but 1971 I believe is what it normally is. So it's much smaller. Again, the colors are still nice. The line work is still nice. Still bendy, good quality cardstock. The next deck that I have, I assume, is about the same year, because it has, it looks almost exactly the same. The ISBN is still pretty small. And then the extra cards also, the extra card is the same too. It still says Encyclopedia of Tarot. It doesn't even say volume 1 or volume 2. And then towards the end of their time at 38 East 32nd Street, this is the 27th printing now. The ISBN number gets bigger. Still no copyright symbol. The Magician is darker. Other than that, everything still is pretty much the same. And at this point, the cardstock still is, it's about the same. Still nice. It's still printed in Switzerland. And then in 1990, I believe, actually, let me rewind a little. When they were at 38 East 32nd, so when the copyright starts being enforced, they also add copyright 1971 by US Game Systems Inc., New York, New York, to the bottom. So that also has been added. So the next edition that I have is the 35th printing, and this one, still no copyright at the top. The bottom is gray. Now the top is bold, and it says the Rider Waite Tarot deck. The side now is bold. And there is a barcode now instead of an ISBN number. Other than that, everything looks the same on the back. So this, the only way you can tell that it's in the 90s at this point is if you just look at the box, is the barcode on the bottom. And in 1990, they moved to Sanford, Connecticut. So if you look at the little white book, it will say Sanford, Connecticut. It's hard, once they move to Sanford, Connecticut, it's hard to tell like which edition, if it's a nice edition, if it's a 90s edition, or if it's like a 2000s edition where it's, the colors are heinous, the cardstock is bad. The only way you really can do that, like you can tell the difference, is with the box, and it's because it still doesn't have the registered trademark at the top. It still doesn't, like, this still looks the same. The back still looks the same. So really it's just, you have to be looking for that and see that there's a barcode on the bottom. And that's how you can tell that it's a 90s deck. At this point, it lists Volume 1 and Volume 2. And Volume 3 came out in 1990, so this deck this is probably the first edition. The 35th printing is probably the first edition at, like, once they've moved to Sanford, Connecticut, because it had to be before 1990 when Volume 3 of the Encyclopedia of Tarot came out, but also they didn't move there until 1990. So I think this is the first printing at the new address, and it's also the same year that the Encyclopedia of Tarot Volume 3 comes out. And then we have the current deck. This is well, I don't know if this is exactly what it looks like still. I don't know how many there are, like how many editions there are now. This is the 60th printing of this deck. At this point, it still says Rider Tarot at the top. This side still looks the same. It still has the barcode. Now US Games has added their little Fool symbol, and then the front, they've added the registered trademark at the top. This is now darker gray than even the other one. And then on the back, it says made in Italy. And then the bottom, the copyright information has gotten significantly more. It says copyright 1971 by US Game Systems Inc., Sanford, Connecticut. The Rider Tarot deck and the Rider Waite Tarot deck are registered trademarks of US Game Systems Inc. Also, Pamela Coleman Smith's name is very large and bold, and the extra cards stop being information about like other books and stuff, and now you get like all of the US Games tarot decks that they produce currently, and then a picture of Pixie, and it is like super glossy, very plasticky, like it smells like vinyl kind of. And also the font has been changed. It's no longer like, this is Pixie's font. This is the current font that they're using. It's like a typeface that's, I guess, as close as they could get it, but like, it's a little half-assed in my opinion. And the copyright is now much bigger. It's much longer on the card. I don't know if you can see. Of course, it's not gonna focus, but I mean, you can kind of tell just by that little blurred line how much longer it is. Yeah, so the addresses are the most important thing to note on the little white books if you're looking for a particular edition of the deck. The Samuel Weiser edition, I mean, it is really amazing. It's really, really nice. Let me just pull the Hermit out and show you the difference, because I think you can tell the most by the Hermit card, honestly. Okay, so this is the current. This is the original. I mean, obviously it's shiny, but you can see how it like has been turned into green, and it's just like, I don't know, it's just not as pretty. And I think they probably changed it because they thought it was prettier, but, or it could just be that it was like a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. So this is what I will say because I pride myself on being able to like hunt down out of print decks and find out of print decks, and I try and get them for a reasonable amount of money. Here's the thing about the yellow box decks. It's important that you know what you're looking for on the box, and also what to look for with the extra cards and with the little white book. If you know what you're looking for and you're diligent about looking on eBay, and also honestly Etsy, you can find some on Etsy. Be careful on Etsy because you will end up spending more money, but if you know what you're looking for and you're patient and you're diligent, you can find them reasonably priced. The Samuel Weiser edition that has the Blushing Fool and the really great cardstock and no copyright at all, I haven't paid more than $50 for any of them. Like I said, this one just came in literally this week, this Samuel Weiser edition. I didn't even know it was a Samuel Weiser edition. It was buy it now on eBay for, I think, $25.99. I bought it because I could tell that it didn't have a copyright, and like I said, I collect the yellow box decks. So I mean, I haven't spent more than $50 on that. Just the regular US Games edition with no copyright, I haven't spent more than probably $50 on those two. The rest of the decks, I haven't spent more than $25 on any of them. I would say the best value for your money is probably the edition from like the 80s. Yeah, it has to be the 80s, because between like 1975 and 1990 are the best for your money, and that one is at 38 East 32nd. Those are readily available. I see them constantly on eBay all the time. And you can get those for $30, under $30. I've gotten them for $10. Like, you can get them. You see those much more than you see the ones that don't have a copyright. But like I said, if you're diligent, you can find them. You will find them, because sometimes they pop up. People don't know what they have, honestly. I think is how I have gotten as lucky as I have, is that people just, they have family members or friends that pass away. They find these. Some people, I found them on pages that are just for like antiques and stuff. So people might have just gone like antique shopping or in an estate sale, and they don't know that what they have is worth money or worth, I guess that's relative too, because if tomorrow the entire world decided that the Rider Waite deck was garbage, then all of these decks aren't worth anything. It's all about what it means to you, why it's important to you. So yeah. So just a few little highlights. If you're looking for a Weiser deck, you're gonna want to see the top of the deck, and it's gonna say Samuel Weiser's name. Also, the little white book also will say Samuel Weiser. So if you're looking for a Weiser deck, that's the deck that you're gonna want to find. If you want a deck that does not have a copyright on it, you are gonna be looking for, it will say US Games on the top. It will not have a barcode. It will not have an ISBN. It won't have any information about whether it is copyrighted or not. And the address will be 468 Park Avenue South, New York, New York, on the little white book. The 80s deck, you will want to, it will look almost the same. The Magician will be gray, still no copyright. Still the top will say, you know, made for US games. Except now there will be an ISBN number on the side. The smaller the ISBN number, the older the deck, typically. The bigger these numbers get, the closer to 1990 the deck is produced. And the little white book also will say 38 East 32nd Street. When it gets to the 90s, still it's going to look the same everywhere, except now the top is going to say the Rider Waite Tarot deck in bold, and the ISBN will instead be a barcode on the bottom. Even the 90s though, the cardstock is nice. I mean, it's still not bad. It is a little shinier, but it's nice. And unless you're just trying to compare, I would say steer clear of the one that's currently available because it is very, very unappealing. Okay, so I'm at about 31 minutes. I think what I'm going to do is try and flip the camera and show you what the different ones look like the differences that you can tell in the decks. That way you'll know which deck you really want to work with. So I'm going to go ahead and flip the camera. Okay, so here we have the High Priestess. And I picked this so you could see how the blue changes. So I started with the Samuel Weiser all the way on the right. Next is 468 Park Avenue South. That's still no copyright. Next is, in the middle, is going to be the 80s deck, all the way up until 1990. And it is 38 East 32nd Street in New York. Then in 1990, it goes to Sanford, Connecticut. And then this is the current edition of the deck. But I just wanted to note that, like, you just lose some of the subtlety in the details. Like, the skirt goes from being, like, really small little blue lines to just, like, straight up, there aren't really any blue lines over here. And the blue is suddenly, like, super saturated. And this column changes color. You can't really tell it, like, on camera as much as you can in person, honestly. But the 80s column is a warmer gray, and then in the 90s, all of a sudden, it goes to this, like, really cold kind of gray. So yeah, that's the High Priestess. Okay, so next we have the Hermit. I picked this one because you can really see the difference. So we have the Samuel Weiser is like a pale duck egg kind of color. Then, oddly enough, before 75, the color gets, like, deepened a little. And then in the 80s, or late 70s, it goes back to kind of the duck egg blue color. And then in the 90s, it shifts and turns into, like, a weird kind of sky blue that doesn't really go with the rest of them. And then the current edition is, like, much more, like, teal, kind of green colored. Okay, so I guess that's it. I hope that you found this helpful. And if you have any questions or anything that I didn't cover or something you'd like more information on, just leave a little comment below and I will definitely do my very best to answer it. Yeah, so happy hunting and good luck finding the deck of your dreams, because you can find it. Just gotta be patient.